I've made at least one video, possibly several videos, and have certainly mentioned before that Foregen plays an important role, actually in several aspects of intactivism. It's morally right and just that genitally mutilated men and boys have access to regenerative medicine, free of charge, frankly. It's important to keep our own activists from going crazy and give our own activists a goal to work towards. That is an ultimate goal, to have regeneration available. Publicly funded regeneration, in my opinion. It's important for new onboards, new people that we're proselytizing the anti-circumcision message to. It's like a key opening a lock. If you don't have something like Foreskin Regeneration, all of intactivism becomes purely a charity effort and somewhat of a psychological coping mechanism, but there's no prospect of being made whole. There's no justice for you, really. The prospect of tissue regeneration changes that completely. It adds an element of self-interest where if you work towards this, if you join with us and if you work towards this goal, one of the end results can be that you get your foreskin back. Now, it won't get you back the lost time and the anguish to date. That's a very dark part of this that I don't really want to address here, but in theory, if we put the work in, I don't know, optimistically, inside a decade, you could have your foreskin regenerated. Okay, let's just, for the sake of the argument, we'll say that. And also, as a more general public relations tool, having a particular thing that you can point to and say, this is what justice would look like. This is an agenda. This is an all-encompassing agenda. We're going to ban circumcision, we're going to punish the perpetrators, and we're going to get justice for victims in the form of tissue regeneration. That's my trifecta. I've said that for years, almost verbatim, that that's our goal. This is all true, and other things that are true. The leadership of Foregen. Enzo is a very earnest and I think honest man. From what I understand, he's an Italian guy who got circumcised, deeply regrets it, realized it was a horrific mistake, desperately wants to undo it and help other people undo it. And he's organized this effort. And other people, the scientists that work there and the volunteers and employees that work there in good faith trying to make this happen. From what I understand, they're talking about extracellular matrices either harvested from cadavers. I don't know, some people have said 3D printed. That's probably even further off, which would then be recellularized with your stem cells, and then there'd have to be a whole operation to reopen your circumcision wound site. And that becomes complicated near the frenulum because the frenulum and where it attaches both on the gland side and on the shaft side where it fans out, it's not really like a line. It's almost like a three-dimensional excavation, or a two-dimensional or a three-dimensional excavation of where structures were completely destroyed. So if you just reopened the scar line and added tissue, it would not really be, I don't know. And then you're talking about blood vessel anastomosis, fairly small, but that's probably doable. I mean, the superficial dorsal vein's fairly large. I don't know how large the frenular artery is. Probably, coronary artery size, and they do blood vessel grafts and angioplasty on that. But then you're talking about nerve suturing. That's not going to be easy, especially because I'm pretty sure the nerve root levels have branched out a lot by the time it gets even into the foreskin, even into the shaft skin. I'm not entirely sure how if the nerves fan out on the gland side or if they come up the shaft. I think it's S2 and S3. Those are the nerve root levels that are responsible for innervation near the tip of the penis. But I've tried to look into this. I haven't gotten really great data. I'm sure it exists. I'd like to understand it better. But this to me has always seemed like a very clumsy way of going about it. Almost like sewing a slice of deli ham to your penis. I mean, it's almost going to be like having rubber sewed to your penis. It's not going to integrate. It's not going to look great. It's not going to feel or roll great. I don't know. I really don't know. It just does not seem right to me. In my opinion, the tissue regeneration space has probably moved on from this style of regeneration, the cutting edge of what the experimental biomedical field is doing. They're studying axolotls, the salamanders with the ability to regenerate. They've identified two genes, catalase and fetub, that are highly active in the regeneration blastemas, which are these, when you sever a limb or a tail in one of these salamanders, it doesn't form a scab or a scar. It forms the cells at the tip in the center of the wound de-differentiate and become multipotent stem cells, and then begin redifferentiating and regrowing the whole limb, almost akin to embryonic development. Oh, and they're doing experiments with frogs, Xenopus laevis, that don't have any inherent adult limb regeneration capability. They've used some chemicals and I believe a hydrogel bandage, and they leave that on for a little while, and then the limb starts regrowing. And it's not perfect. There's pictures of it. It forms a thing that looks like a foot. It's not quite right. The toe length isn't quite right, but there's bones. I mean, there's a full structure. I mean, it looks like a foot. It's a foot. And as a first approximation, that's pretty incredible. So to me, what foreskin regeneration will probably look like in a way that's really satisfactory and yields a foreskin and a penis, genitalia, that looks indistinguishable from an anatomically correct penis, someone who's never been circumcised, that neurologically is like a penis that's never been circumcised, that you've never been circumcised, that physically and sexually, it rolls, it biointegrates. There's not evidence of scarring and discontinuities where old tissue and new tissue meet. In order to get that, you're going to have to do the latter. You're not going to be able to stitch a hunk of recellularized cadaver to your penis. My personal mental map for what foreskin regeneration is going to look like is something like this. They're going to go in. They're going to debride the wound. What I'm about to say is somewhat controversial. I don't know about this. I almost think they're going to want to cut off the entire penis forward of the circumcision scar. Another thing is when you reopen the circumcision wound, so many people are circumcised so tightly, that skin's going to rebound close to the base of the penis. So there's going to be like an open wound there. I don't know. I don't know if you can get the foreskin to re-advance up the shaft of the penis the way it does during embryonic development without completely removing the penis and forcing the whole thing to regrow. Meanwhile, you're probably going to have a suprapubic catheter fitted, where they punch a hole above your pubic bone, down low on your belly, below your belly button, but above your pubic bone. So you're urinating through a tube, not disturbing the wound site. So they'll somehow open the wound. They will apply gene therapies. They will apply mRNA therapies. They may apply mRNA therapies with lipid nanoparticles, recent developments with the COVID vaccine. They may apply peptides, protein-based drugs. So we've gone from gene therapy to mRNAs to now we've done the transcription and we've translated it to actual proteins that would be expressed in regeneration blastemas. Maybe small molecules, maybe gene inducers, maybe gene inhibitors, and maybe they would apply like a hydrogel bandage. I've seen some reports of like electrotherapy, electro-regenerative medicine. Some people have messaged me on that. I'm not really that well versed in that aspect of it. I'm mostly thinking about recreating the regeneration blastema of an axolotl. So they'll do that. They'll apply the hydrogel bandage, and then over the course of the next, 8 months, 10 months, a year, your penis, your foreskin, or maybe your whole penis will regrow, hopefully indistinguishable from an uncircumcised penis, indistinguishable from an uncircumcised man, an intact man who was never circumcised at birth, histologically indistinguishable, neurologically indistinguishable, bulk appearance indistinguishable, functionally indistinguishable. That to me is probably the goal. I don't think circumcised men should settle for any less. So in this respect, the intentions of the people that work at Foregen are pure, but I think that foreskin regeneration is not going to happen first at Foregen. I don't think it's going to happen at Foregen. I don't think satisfactory foreskin regeneration is going to happen at Foregen if they continue the current research path. I think the state of the cutting edge of research has passed them by. I don't know. That money could be better spent on research elsewhere. It could be better spent. I remember when Foregen used to bring in $10,000 a month. They're currently bringing in about $27,000 a month, according to their most recent tax filing. You can see it on ProPublica. It ends up being about $322,000 in 2024. One thing I've never really understood is that Foregen insists on doing research, I think, in Italy. I mean, I'm sorry, but the parity purchasing power of money in Italy is not good. I would think you'd almost have a fiduciary duty to move the money probably to China, where the regulatory situation is more lax, where the permitting and approval process is probably faster. And if not China, maybe somewhere else in Southeast Asia. I mean, there's a lot of investment and development and technology going on in that region. The people are skilled, but you get a multiplying factor from moving the currencies over. I mean, the money they get now barely pays, I think, 2 research scientists. It's almost an act of love. I can't imagine they're really being paid full market wages for that kind of work. I mean, what you need is a whole team. I mean, what we really need is a team the size of Pfizer or Eli Lilly or GlaxoSmithKline or something, throwing all their resources at it. And that's really one of the ultimate goals of intactivism. We want to wrest control of the levers of the state and use state resources to make this happen. Certainly state resources were used to circumcise a non-trivial part of the country. I mean, think of the Medicaid circumcisions. That's the government directly responsible for the genital mutilation of tens of millions of boys and men. So there's an opportunity cost of not moving that into more effective forms of regeneration, into not moving the money out of the country to places where the money buys more research, into not putting that money into agitation and activism that could have a multiplication factor in getting more money in research. I mean, I don't even think they advertise pouring money into lobbying efforts. Anthony LaSquadro is quite proud that his organization is really the first and only lobbying effort that maintains an active, paid team of lobbyists on Capitol Hill trying to get this issue in front of people. I think regeneration specifically needs to be on the agenda. I don't know if he should reveal that now, or if he should talk with his lobbyists about that, or if he should try to get his lobbyists to mention this to the politicians. But there's that aspect. So people have asked me my opinion on 4Gen before. In my heart of hearts, that's my take on it at this point in time. Good intentions. I don't think it's necessarily the best use of resources, and I don't think they're going to be the first people to get regeneration technology. I don't think they're going to be the first people to get foreskin regeneration technology. I don't think they're going to be the first people to get satisfactory results of foreskin regeneration technology. Another aspect is, like, at a certain point, research medicine has to meet clinical medicine. And within the US, there's like, clinical medicine is not going to want to implant regenerated foreskins. They're not going to want to dabble in the type of things I'm talking about. You know, reopening the wound site and treating it with mRNA therapies or gene therapies or protein-based drugs. And the way we know this is because they're not transplanting foreskins. There's a technology that could be done right now that is not being done. We could transplant a foreskin. It actually would probably have better results. I mean, we could do it now and we could see how it works. If it biointegrates, it wouldn't be perfect. It would be interesting to try it with twins. If a twin ended up brain dead, and then you wouldn't have an identical twin, and then you wouldn't even have rejection issues. And we have the anti-rejection medication. And this, in theory, should not be controversial. We have the entire transgendered, gender sex reassignment surgery is based on the idea that your psychological perception of your genitals can be so disconcerting that major surgery is justified in fixing it. I would argue more major than a foreskin transplant. And the supply of foreskins cannot be that limited. I mean, we've got doctors that will actually cut off healthy limbs. There's people that have psychological rejection of their limbs, and they have just this intense bodily dysphoria, bodily dysmorphia disorder. They have to cut it off. They have to cut it off. And there are doctors that will indulge this. And apparently some of these people are perfectly happy after they have it done. There was a lady who wanted to be blind. She couldn't stand her eyes, and I think it was actually her therapist, and her therapist dribbled acid into her eyes and burned her eyes and blinded her. And there's a subset of these people that are into apotmenophilia, that are sexually aroused with this amputation fetish. It's another weird, freakish aspect of this. So many hurdles, many hurdles. Anyway, this is my take on foreskin regeneration. I think the latter aspect of this, about where research medicine meets clinical medicine with regard to foreskin regeneration, is going to be an interesting one. We're not there yet because the technology doesn't really exist yet as far as we know. But I think, when that kind of stuff does start to become available, for me, the biggest hallmark is not waiting on an article that talks about foreskin regeneration. It's looking into medical literature and suddenly seeing an article that talks about limb regeneration, almost complete normal limb regeneration in a lab animal, especially a mammal. I would like to see a lab mouse or lab rat have its paw or tail regenerated. That would be impressive. If they can do that, the technology is arriving. And at that point, the clash between research and clinical medicine on foreskin, if you apply that technology to foreskin and genitals, becomes controversial. That's my take on foreskin regeneration. That little last bit about research medicine versus clinical medicine, another thing to think about. Tell me what you guys think. Tell me in the comments. Take care. Bye-bye.